The partnership between Orville and Wilbur Wright began not in aviation, but in printing. The brothers started their own newspaper in 1889. A few years later, they opened up a bicycle shop in their hometown of Dayton, Ohio. They repaired and designed bikes. It was a successful business, but Orville and Wilbur started developing a fascination with aeronautics. Human flight was inching towards reality by the 1890s, and the brothers began enthusiastically following Otto Lilienthal, a German flight pioneer. In 1896, Lilienthal was killed in a glider accident, and the Wright brothers decided to pick up where he left off. Orville and Wilbur started experimenting with planes in their bike shop, and in 1900 made their first trip to Kitty Hawk, North Carolina. They chose the area for its wide, unobstructed beaches and steady winds, ideal for glider launches and landings. The Wright brothers went through a series of glider designs throughout the next 2 years, and in 1903 they added power, calling their powered plane the Wright Flyer 1. On December 17, 1903, back in Kitty Hawk, North Carolina, with Orville at the controls, the Wright Flyer 1 left the ground, reaching an altitude of 10 feet and traveled 120 feet, a 12-second flight, the first manned, power-driven airplane flight in history. Wilbur followed up his brother's flight, covering 175 feet. Then Orville went again, this time 200 feet. And the last flight of the day, Wilbur took the Wright Flyer 1 852 feet in 59 seconds. The brothers telegraphed home to report their success, but the accomplishment was barely acknowledged. The American press was uninterested. Orville and Wilbur's milestones weren't considered significant enough, too short to be worth any sort of a headline.
They said that if the flight had been 59 minutes instead of 59 seconds, they would have printed it.
For the Wright brothers, it was disappointing, but not discouraging. They returned to their bike shop in Dayton and continued to research and develop their project.
When Uncle Orv and Uncle Will came home from Kitty Hawk, they felt that they had to find someplace closer to Dayton.
In 1904, they built the Wright Flyer 2, a more powerful version of the Wright Flyer 1. And instead of making the trek again to Kitty Hawk, Orville and Wilbur set up an airfield at Huffman Prairie, a cow pasture only a few miles northeast of Dayton. Dozens of flights followed, each marking another measure of progress. With the Wright Flyer 2, the Wright brothers would achieve a 5-minute flight and the ability to fly in complete circles. With a new year came another new plane. In 1905, the Wright brothers introduced the Wright Flyer 3. They used it to accomplish a series of long flights, one as long as 24 miles. But the public remained skeptical. Few reporters were there to witness what the Wright brothers were doing at Huffman Prairie. And outside of Ohio, it was mostly hearsay. Over the next 2 years, the Wright brothers didn't fly at all. Instead, they worked tirelessly to convince the U.S. government that human flight was viable, but they only met rejection. So the Wright brothers decided to try their luck across the pond. In 1908, Wilbur traveled to France and began public demonstrations of their aircrafts. They were a huge success, and Orville started doing the same stateside, breaking speed and endurance records, thrilling audiences, and finally earning the recognition and appreciation of the world. It wasn't long before everyone knew who the Wright brothers were.
In 1910, Uncle Orv and Uncle Will returned to the prairie, and they were ready to go into business.
Orville and Wilbur opened up the Wright Company. and began manufacturing airplanes. That same year, they established the Wright Brothers Flying School, where they trained the likes of Henry Arnold, the future commander of the U.S. Army Air Forces.
General Arnold, Chief of the Army Air Forces, is honored with Orville Wright, who in 1911 taught Arnold to fly.
By the 1910s, the Wright brothers were world famous, and the industry they perfected was expanding quickly. But sadly, it's something Wilbur wouldn't live to see. Running the Wright Company had taken its toll, and he passed away in 1912. A heartbroken Orville continued to run the business before selling it in 1915. He made his last flight in 1918, but he would live to see the early beginnings of the jet age, a testament to the ingenuity and persistence he and his brother put forth on the sands of the North Carolina coast on December 17th, 1903.